Hello everyone! This is an incredible story of a dog who was dying, but miraculously came back to life, just to see his owner one last time. A man from Ireland named Gary Faherty was heartbroken when his beloved dog of 13 years, a golden retriever named Benji, began to pass away. At first, the dog's condition began to deteriorate rapidly, but then something miraculous happened. The dog's tail began to wag. Gary rushed him to the vet, but unfortunately, despite all their efforts, both the vet and Gary were unable to save the dog. However, he still had one wish, which was to see his owner one last time. And amazingly, the dog was brought back to life so that he could fulfill this wish. It all started when Gary noticed that Benji wasn't looking well. He seemed lethargic and didn't want to play. Gary took him to the vet, who diagnosed him with a serious heart condition. The vet explained that there was a hole in the dog's heart and that surgery was the only option to fix it. But even then, there was no guarantee that the operation would be successful. Gary loved his dog very much and couldn't bear the thought of losing him, so he decided to go ahead with the surgery. The operation lasted for several hours, and when Gary went to check on Benji, his heart sank. The dog's condition was critical, and the vet told him that there was nothing more they could do. But then something amazing happened. As Gary was leaving the vet's office, he heard a faint tail thump. He turned around and saw that Benji was wagging his tail weakly, but he was still alive. Overjoyed, Gary rushed back to the car with Benji and drove him home. But the dog's condition quickly deteriorated again. Once again, he became unresponsive, and his heart rate dropped. Realizing that this was probably goodbye, Gary called his friend and asked him to come over and say a final farewell to Benji. However, when his friend arrived, Benji's tail began to wag once again. Gary couldn't believe his eyes. He couldn't understand how his dog was still alive. Benji passed away peacefully in Gary's arms. A few minutes later, Gary was devastated, but at least he knew that he had done everything he could to save his best friend. After Benji was cremated, Gary buried his ashes in the garden and placed a headstone at his grave. He was heartbroken, but he knew that Benji was in a better place now. However, what happened next was truly amazing. A few weeks later, Gary was sitting in his garden when he heard a noise. He turned around and saw a small wooden box with the inscription, "Open me when I'm gone," being pushed towards him by his other dog. Gary opened the box and found a letter inside. It read, "When you're reading this, I'll be running free and happy at the bridge. Don't grieve for me. I had a good life, and I loved you to the end." Gary couldn't believe what he was reading. He looked up and saw that the box had been pushed open by Benji's ghost, who was wagging his tail one last time before disappearing. Gary was stunned. He couldn't believe that his dog had come back to say goodbye. If you enjoyed this emotional story, please don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Thanks for watching. See you soon.